For being here and having the patience and coming out on this cold night to hear our story and our beginnings. You know, doing this has given us a chance to go back and look at a lot of pictures, a lot of information from the past, and how much we realize how blessed we are to be here as a part of the Grand Lake community. And how blessed we are to have the business we do and be able to share it with others. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself first, I grew up in Northern Illinois, grew up on a dairy farm, and it was in a Norwegian community. One of the first words I think I learned was "ufta." And when things got really bad, it was "ufta meg." But from there, went to a one-room country school with all 8 grades. There was anywhere from 18 to as many as 24 students. We had no indoor plumbing. And you may look at me and say, is he really that old? Yes, I am. It was before back in our area, before consolidation of schools started. And so I figured that I really had a neat experience to be just like that TV show, Little House on the Prairie. From there, I went to a small high school in Newark, Illinois. Obviously, we're the Norsemen, being Norwegian. And after that, went to Iowa State, where I studied agriculture, specifically animal science. The first experience I had with Grand Lake, I had the opportunity to come out here for the summer of 1964. I was still in college at the time, but that was the year that the Bussies, Bobany Lane, opened Winding River Ranch. And I had the privilege of coming out here with them at that time and helping them clean up, and got to learn a lot about the iron in your water and how to clean toilets. But it was a great experience. And during that time that I was out here, see it. Some of the things, ranch type things that we're able to do, we burned ditches on the irrigation. We put up hay. We also started taking in some guests. There were just 2 cabins there at the time, and so not a lot to offer. But what we decided to do with a team of actually a team of mules, Molly and Mollyo, we came to town with a unit called a tally ho, and we promoted steak fry dinners, breakfast rides, and horseback riding. And during that summer, we would do a breakfast ride by going up into the forest ahead of time with a little old scout, and take all the ingredients up there, and then the riders would come and follow up, and we'd serve them breakfast. We'd do a similar thing with the steak fry at night, and then it was time to get out the guitar and do a little bit of singing. And I think at the time we were doing all that breakfast for $3 and dinner for $5. Things have changed just a little bit. So, some of the things that I remember when I first came out to Grand Lake, in the town of Grand Lake. Okay. Thinking about some of the facilities as you drove into town, there was Sombrero Stables. If you remember, that was, of course, a horse operation. There was Bunk and Broncos. Or, you remember that? Some of you might. Yeah, that was where the bowling alley in town was. The bowling alley, of course, is gone now too. But the lumber yard, so convenient to have a lumber yard right here in town. And I believe that's where the hardware store is. Yeah, at the present time. The Pine Cone Inn, the Skelly Gas, reaching way back.
Which one was Skelly Gas? Where is that one?
That gas station,
Where was it? Remax, or Remax.
is that where Remax?
Oh, okay.
See,
Good.
you got an old timer.
Yeah.
And of course, the corner cupboard, which that's gone. That was kitty corner from where Sagebrush is. Humphrey's still there. And the miniature golf course. I remember that in town. Grocery store where the Sagebrush was. Also a dress shop. I wasn't there when it was a jail. And where we're sitting right here, I remembered as a movie theater. Also, coming down on the other side of the street, remember the post office when it was in town.
And tell people that's where Never Summer is.
Yes, where Never Summer Outfitters are. And
The Scandinavian Coffee House.
absolutely,
Yeah.
get Swedish pancakes.
With lingonberries.
Remember those with lingonberries, yes. And who could forget the foghorn?
Yes.
Yes. Foghorn became Grumpy's. And today I think it's the White Buffalo.
That's right.
So, anyway,
There was a Stables downtown here too that, what was the name of that Stables where the?
Rustic Stable.
Rustic Stables. Yes, when I first came here,
Rock Garber.
there was several horse operations at the time. And that, of course, has changed. But Grand Lake at that time was known as the guest ranch capital of Colorado.
Grand Lake.
No, excuse me, Grand County.
Grand County.
Grand County, thanks. And there was Never Summer Guest Ranch, which was the Holsworth Ranch. That was still in existence. There was Green Mountain Ranch, also part of the park. Sun Valley Ranch, just above us, with the Brudens. Also, of course, in the county, we have Bar Lazy J still in existence, Drowsy Water, Sea Lazy U. Slash J Slash was a guest ranch at one time. The Latigo, a guest ranch. What we wanted to do when we first got in the camping business was we called it guest ranch camping, which explains a lot of the programs that we'll talk about here a little bit later that we got involved in. But you know, we left Grand Lake, or I left Grand Lake, of course, after that summer. I hadn't finished school, went back to Iowa State, graduated, got married, had a couple of kids, worked for a pharmaceutical company in the state of Wisconsin, and was traveling quite a bit. And I knew that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted to continue. And we had this love that we had established for this area and the lifestyle out here. So we packed up and left Wisconsin and moved to Grand Lake. At that time, we had the offer from Bobby and Lane Bussey, who at that time were my in-laws. I'm trying to do like Marty and direct the choir here. Anyway, in the meantime, from between 64 and 69, Bobby and Lane Bussey had developed a campground in addition to the Winding River Guest Ranch. And that campground, they never did operate. It was operated by managers. I had one of my fellow classmates from college, him and his wife came and managed it a couple of years, and several other people. And in 1969, they had actually done this, started it in 65. But in 1969, they decided it was time to sell and have all of their time devoted to the ranch, to the guest ranch part of it. So they gave us a call and asked if we'd have any interest in purchasing, and of course, we didn't have any money. And said, I don't know how we can figure that out, but he came up with a little bit of creative financing. Bob said, I'll go get a loan on it and you make the payments. And you know, it worked. So that's where it all started. We got that? Oh, yeah. As far as additional of the, the campground itself was built in a very unique location. That was a sawmill and logging camp. There were a number of cabins there when we first came out. 2 of them we converted and remodeled. They were made out of the rough cut lumber that came from that sawmill and slab siding. And it made it very interesting place to build a campground. And started there with 52 campsites. We weren't in a position, I had gone in the real estate business at the time. After we moved out of the Grand Lake area, moved down to Denver, and didn't feel I could leave that just to be here during the summer. So we hired managers and first go around, found a manager couple that were school teachers that agreed to be here for 8 years. Tom and Gloria Baldwin. And they took it on as if it was their own. They had kids that were just the right age to work there and take out trail rides, clean restrooms. And it all worked out. So, but while we would continue coming up here and would be here on weekends and as much during the week as possible. And I can't go without mentioning some of the characters that we met in Grand Lake. One of them was sitting right here in the front row. So happy to see him tonight, Dean Mullinex. Also, Dean mentioned Rocky Garber. I know some of you might know Rocky and his wife Barb. Mac Rusk. Mac was a pioneer and really got the snowmobile business going here in the Grand Lake area, and was also a builder. Mac built the barn at Winding River Ranch, the barn when they bought it. Ken Bruton, he was kind of the John Wayne of Grand Lake. Ken and Sean have just been great neighbors up by us. And Mary Baumgartner, a lot of you know her. I met her for the very first time when she had a lease for her cattle, and somehow they wandered over to the Arapahoe Forest and came into our property. And I called her and felt like I was doing her a favor and told her I thought I had her cattle. And she came out, and the first thing she informed me, she said, "It is your job to keep them out. It's not my job to keep them in." She said, "This is the law of the West." So I got a lesson real quick.
This was like 5 or 6 miles. that
Oh,
they
I know.
got north.
They had wandered.
Yeah.
And she had no idea where they were. And then you cannot forget Louis Heckert. If you ever met Louis, he certainly would made an impression on you. No one loved Grand Lake any more than Louis Heckert. Louis was the mayor of Grand Lake and the president of the Chamber of Commerce at the same time. You know Louis Heckert from doing bingo, being active there, and just a great supporter of the chamber. I know when I got involved in the chamber after coming back here, he was just the greatest help. So Louis and his wife Gladys had the dry cleaners that was next to Mountain Food Market. So, anyway,
He and his wife were great tap dancers.
oh, yes. And Louis danced till almost the day he died. Yeah,
The night before.
the night before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a true story.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was quite a personality. Oh. Okay. When we were here during that period, 1972, we started some of those Western type things, like I mentioned, and some of the activities that we were doing were campfire sings at night. We did those several times during the week. We also did square dancing, which we still carries on today. Started ice cream socials. And one of the real fun, unique things, we had a 16mm projector and a screen that was put up between two trees, pulled down right on the river, and showed Disney movies. We worked with the Denver Library, and they would send us a different Disney movie every week. And that was back in the day of the Don Knotts and Tim Conway movie. We had some really good ones. But anyway, a year after we purchased in 1972. In 1973, we were approached by Gates Land Company. Might be familiar with Gates Rubber out of Denver. Well, Gates Land Company was a part of that. They had the idea that they were going to put a ski area here in the Grand Lake area. And they gave us, we gave them an option to purchase our property, and the ranch did the same. We gave them 2 one-year options to get their act together and get all that needed to be done with the Forest Service. Fortunately for us, it didn't go through. And that ski area never happened here. Otherwise, Grand Lake would be completely different.
Tell where it was, across the Rainbow Bridge, coming down to Shoreline Landing. Is that right? So where the ski area was supposed to be?
Yeah, I didn't recall.
That was a
Oh,
different
yeah.
one down the
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so go ahead.
All right, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody that's got any questions or
Additional information.
additional or wants to, do we have any fact checkers here?
We're going to community notes.
You know, we came back, I had been in the Denver area, specifically Broomfield, for a number of years, trying to make enough money to feed this hobby up here. The summer income just wasn't enough for us to stay here year-round. And camping, of course, has its limitations. Pretty difficult to camp during the wintertime. We tried it. We tried being open, but between plowing roads, thawing out water lines, and pulling people out of ditches, and Trail Ridge Road being closed, you know, it just didn't really work out. But we came back here in 1988, and at that time we're looking for just some way that we could make this a year-round business for us. And we knew the summer could be good, because we'd already experienced that for years. Our very first thought was that maybe it being a cross-country ski area would be the answer. But again, we couldn't do the volume of business in our particular situation, and the golf course did a much better job. They had the terrain, and they had what was necessary to have a good cross-country skiing area. So that idea went to the side, but we started doing events. One of those events we started in the early 90s was classic car shows. We ended up doing 6 years of classic car shows. And those were fun. I have a love of classic cars personally, and it was so fun to have. We had a GTO club out of Denver that was a big supporter, and we had a club out of Fort Collins area that were big into the retractable hardtops that were built in the late 50s. We would put a package together for that group, and that would include their weekend stay and the car show, and we would have prizes, and on Sunday morning we'd have a chuck wagon breakfast. After that breakfast, the cry was, "Start your engines." Everybody would get in their car, and we would come to Grand Lake. And we had an unannounced parade through Grand Lake. And that was a great memory. Then we started also sled dog racing. And that went on for 9 years. And what fun that was. The Chamber of Commerce was very supportive with that. And with the sled dog racing, we were doing shows in the Denver area to promote, and happened to be next to someone that was promoting sled dog racing and dog food.
Yeah.
Happened to be Kent Allen and Pam, his wife from Hot Sulphur Springs. And through them, they belonged to a group that was part of the racing district. And so we became a part of the tour and had anywhere from 1 to as many as 3 sled dog races here each year for 9 years. The last year we had that, I had never had any personal experience with driving a sled dog team. But there was a gentleman from Golden that came to me and he said, "You know, I came in last yesterday. It's a 2-day race." He said, "I came in last yesterday, and today I'll go out last. And I don't really think I've got anything to gain." He said, "How would you like to drive my team?" "Oh yeah, I'll do that." So he gave me a quick lesson, stay crouched, stand up, hang on. And he had a 6-dog team, which goes 6 miles. I made it 4. There was a steward along the track that said, "Wes, stand up, I want your picture." I stood up, and I slowly tipped over.
So
Yeah.
was that down Tunnel Road? Where did you do the sled dog races?
Sled dog racing included our property,
Okay,
the ranch property,
okay,
Bob's property.
okay, so
All
all
of
around
that.
up there.
Yeah, to do sled dog racing, we're actually 2 miles between Winding River Ranch and Winding River Resort, but we made a 4-mile loop.
Wow.
4 dog racers did the 4-mile loop. Then you had 6 dog racers, 8 dog racers, and we had fingers coming off that loop. Similar to going to the airport and going through security line. And then they would be gated off. And once it came to the 8 dog race, all fingers were open and went from there. So then other things that we started sleigh rides. And one of the first things we did, the Chamber of Commerce found us a sleigh. And that sleigh was out at the old Heritage Ranch. But anyway, we fixed that sleigh up and began doing sleigh rides in the town of Grand Lake through the Christmas period. And did rides every 20 minutes to a half hour, taking people through the icy roads of town. And then, of course, we did continue that by doing sleigh rides at our own place. And that developed into some dinner sleigh rides, where we did the sleigh ride and then served chili. Yes, and then at the Grand Lake Elementary School, one of the greatest memories was coming in and taking all the kids. At that time, there was probably 70 or 80 kids in Grand Lake. Fill that sleigh with about 20 or 25 kids and do multiple rides around town. And we've had people since then then we also did some sleigh ride engagement parties, sleigh ride weddings. One of the most memorable was a wedding that we did for a couple out of San Antonio. They came for a winter wedding. That was their, and wanted to get married on a sleigh. I said, okay. I went out the day ahead of time and tried to groom the trail and get it as solid as it could be so that they could get out and understand it. I came along with the bride, maid of honor, and the ring bearer. And we got a little bit off the trail. We tipped the sleigh over. The groom and the best man were standing in front in their tuxes, their red tie, and shirts. The women were in white purple. I mean, this was a real normally when I do a special sleigh ride, especially for a wedding, you get a tip. Not to this day have I gotten a tip. But I would bet that they had some good stories and are still telling them today. Another, well, we tipped one over before too, but you know, we learned our lessons, so. Yeah, we tipped one over on Christmas Eve. Well, all in fun. One other thing that we started doing, we had a group called Everywhere West. And some of you might remember that in the early 90s. It was a Western group similar to the Sons of the Pioneers, sang that type of Western music and started out, I think it was in 92, did that 4 nights a week. 93 did it 7 nights a week. And we did a steak dinner and then the entertainment to follow. So, needless to say, we tried a lot of things to make this business more feasible for year-round income. And it wasn't until 1995 that we actually found the key to a stable 2-season business. And at that time, we went into the snowmobile business in the wintertime, so that we had a winter season and of course the resort business during the summer. And then started that with Jim Wald and his wife Tammy, who were builders. Jim was a builder in the area, and we were partners in the snowmobile business for 15 years. And then Jim decided he wanted to move back to Wisconsin, where he originated from, and our son-in-law Nick, who's here tonight, took over his part of that business and has operated it ever since. And that has business grown from, started with 10 ski-doos to, at one time we were over 100. I think we're settled down around 70 or 75 right now. Anyway, it's been so helpful for us to be able to stay here and enjoy Winding River both summer and winter. The most important part of my life happened right after that, in 1997. Marcia came in the picture. And like my neighbor said, Ken Burton came to me after I'd been married for a couple of years, and he said, I don't know what's going on down there, but he said, ever since you got married, that place really has shaped up. I'm going to let Marcia tell her story.
Wes and I actually met under the basketball hoop in Grand Lake Elementary School. And Corey, our youngest son, was playing basketball at that time, and I was coaching because I have some background in that area. But yeah, so that was, and I talked to him. Actually, I didn't know it, but I was being set up. And but I'm so thankful to these friends who did that. But they knew Wes really well, and they're a couple that I'd worked with many years previous, and I'll get to that in a minute. But and so we started when we first met. My thing was, I didn't know, so you have to know that. But I said, I've always wanted to learn how to drive a team. And he was like, oh, that'd be great. So, that's where it all began. And you were supposed to talk about this part, remember? Yeah, this is supposed to be his still. This isn't supposed to be mine yet. But anyhow, needless to say, I was 37 years old, and I had waited a long time to find the Christian cowboy that I'd been waiting for. And I'd always told my parents, that's who I'm going to marry someday, is a Christian cowboy. And I kept looking and looking and looking, and I'd actually given up. I was like, you know what, you're getting too old, this isn't going to happen. So let's just deal with it and move on. But we had, in June of that year, we had a Western wedding. And it was so much fun. It was like my dream, I can't even, it was amazing. But he had the groom's gang, which was really cool. And so we were trying to we figured there was about 16 people on horseback for our wedding, and including Elaine, she was on horseback, and the whole group of them, came in part of our property, and so that was really cool. And then Wes, I had no idea. I thought I was going out in the wagon with the team, with their Amy and Liz, and I thought that's just going to be awesome. Well, when we were getting dressed and getting ready to go, up comes this white carriage pulled by a team of white mules, and I was like, "What is this? I've never seen this. He's never shown me this before." But he had actually had a good friend, Willis Ham, that had decided that Wes talked to and asked if he would do it, and he came and did that for us. So my dad is in there, and he's got a shotgun. I mean, we're all dressed Western, It's so cool because I grew up in Ohio, but I always felt like I was misplaced because I always had a pair of cowgirl boots, always wanting the fringe jacket, the raccoon hat, when you would go to these different stores. So it just was really neat how God brought it all around for me and led Wes and I together. So let me back up then now. I grew up in Ohio in a small town of less than 1,000 people. To tell you how small it was, they vote every year on the town storehead, and then they paint the name on the side of one of the buildings downtown. So it was just always a crazy, funny thing. But that's where I grew up, in a little town called Wayne. I went to Defiance College, where I got teaching certificates in physical education, health, and biology, and also got coaching certifications. I was an athlete, so I played volleyball, basketball, and softball in college. That's why I went to a small school, because I wanted to play more than one sport. People would say, well, what is your favorite sport? And I'd say, the one I'm playing. So that was just who I was. But I taught for 5 years then after college and coached in Ohio. Actually ended up my last 3 years at the school where I graduated from high school, which was a little weird. Actually going back, I was still pretty young, and I was teaching with my teachers. So that was a little weird, but it was awesome. It was an awesome time. And I had decided that I wanted to do something more relative to basically being a part of a Christian organization. I wanted to help kids, and I wanted to, so with the coaching was great, but you got lesson plans and, you know, all that kind of stuff got in the way with teaching. And I don't know, my heart was in it and because I love the kids. But I just always felt like there was something else that God was calling me to do. So I went to Bowling Green State University to get my master's degree. And in that process, I actually did my thesis on starting a USA women's basketball team for Athletes in Action, which is a ministry at Campus Crusade for Christ. And so that was pretty cool. And I graduated then with athletic administration and sports management degree from there. And it was really cool because then Athletes in Action actually contacted me before I graduated and said, will you start this USA women's basketball team for us? They had a men's team, but they never had a women's team. And the team travels, just to give you an idea, our team would travel all over the country for about 30 days. And we did preseason games in all kinds of colleges. We were an exhibition team, and I helped put that together then and recruit all the players. I'll never forget, I went the first time to out to the Final Four because they have the convention, the coaches convention that goes alongside that. And anyhow, so I'm getting way off. I'm going to get back. But I worked with that. That was an amazing experience. I traveled the world. I went to Russia, Australia, Czechoslovakia with the women's basketball program. So, what brought me to Grand Lake is one of the ministries of Campus Crusade for Christ. I actually had gone from Athletes in Action to the National Ministries team in Orlando, Florida, and there was a new ministry that was starting here in the Grand Lake area called MAN Ministry, and it was an acronym for Man's Authentic Nature. And so there was someone that I worked with at Athletes in Action, that happens to be the same people who introduced us, that then had started to be and come and be a part of that MAN Ministry. And so they had asked me, because MAN Ministry came to Winding River Ranch. They had leased the ranch, and they were going to have MAN events. It was during the time of Promise Keepers when that was really big, and so they were going to kind of try to take the men to the next level. And while I was there helping out for 2 weeks following staff training, the Lord said to me, I want you to come here and be a part of this. And that was amazing, because I was like, I had prayed that a long time ago before that. Lord, if you ever want to take me to Colorado, I'd be glad to go. I put my hand up for that. And so basically that's what happened then, is I came here and met Wes. We got married in 97, and let's see, I assisted Wes with Winding River Resort for many years, and helped out with our store, was responsible for scheduling, shopping, ordering supplies, assisting with the chuck wagon breakfast, dinners, events, and that was great. At some point, God was leading me, though, with a prior dream that I had over 35 years, and we will get to that in a little bit.
You know, things were starting to really solidify for us. As you probably can tell, we struggled, we searched for a number of years trying to figure things out, how to be able to stay in Grand Lake, how to enjoy this beautiful country and this community. And after we were married, I think we consolidated our thinking and really zeroed in on what we wanted our life to be, what we wanted Winding River to be. We wanted to convey family values. We wanted to convey Christian values, all as a part of our business and as part of our family life. And this business has always included our family. Each and every one of them, Heidi, Bill, Michelle, Melissa, and Corey, all have put their signature on this property in some way and on this business. Some are still involved. As you know, Dick has been with us as a son-in-law for 30 years. And has taken care of the barn staff, does all the hiring. He's taking over fully this year, the entire business in terms, and also for years, ever since Jim Walt left, took over the snowmobile business. But we are so fortunate to have had our family enjoy the same experience. But one of the things that I learned early on, I went to a campground owners convention, and the speaker who owned Garden of the Gods campground, he really impressed me with just one thing that he had said. He says, "You're more than in the campground or the lodging business. You're in the memory business. How do you make people feel when they come to visit you? What do they feel when they drive home? Are they ready to come back? Do they have a good time?" You're in the business of creating memories. And that we have tried to do through each activity that we offer. Whether it be a sleigh ride, dressing up like a Dickens character, and driving, taking the sleigh through the streets of town, or whether it be a pancake breakfast and flipping pancakes over our back and offering 10 different ingredients to choose from, and making wagon wheel sized pancakes. So, but in each thing, we have tried to do something a little bit special that creates those memories. And I think that's so important for all of us to remember if we are involved in a business here, that really memories are something that really carries on. You know, this past week, Marcia and I were in Denver, and we were at an Office Max, and we had purchased an office chair, and I went up to the counter and gave her a credit card, and she looked at it, and she said, "Tiny River." She said, "I spent weekend after weekend with you when I was growing up." She's 40 years old now. She helped us load that chair. And she turned around and she said, "Thanks for the childhood memories." I don't know what more you could ask for. And that was just 1 week ago. So anyway, the business has been so much more than just a business to us. It's truly been family and family values, and being able to carry that on and impart that to our guests. It's also with the employees. We have had a very unique situation, and starting back in the early 90s, hired work campers. Work campers, at that time, most of them were retired. And they were people who had a camping unit and wanted to spend time in a cooler place in the summertime and would go to a warmer place in the wintertime. And we started with work camper couples, and the important thing with them was to find people not only with certain skills to fill our needs, but also those that would concur with our philosophy and our goals. Many of them have been back for a number of years. We've had, I think, 4 couples we figured have been here with us for 12 years. We have 1 couple that was with us for 16 years. And it just a joy to call them family and friends in a different way. So, are we running short?
That's why I wondered how's our time.
So you're fine. Officially 12 more minutes, but okay.
Okay. There was, during our time here, there's been some events that I know a lot of you have been involved in. We had a flood back in the 80s that wiped out our bridge on County Road 491. And, yeah, campers were stranded for a day. And nowhere to go. Yeah, but for only one day. Temporary bridge was brought in from Greeley and installed very quickly. Then we had another flood when the Grand Ditch broke. And at that time, the river changed its course for good. It had changed a couple times before, and Rocky Mountain National Park encouraged us to put them back, which we did. And this time they said, let it go. And so now the river is in a new course. And of course, we've had a couple fires. Very early in our time, our barn burned down. It was a very small barn, but we lost all our tack, all of the horse tack. And that would have been back in the early 70s. And then in 1988, the lodge building, at that time, our middle daughter, Michelle, had just graduated from high school. She brought out all of her gifts and stuff, and was staying up there before we came. We were still living in Broomfield at the time, and before we came out, and a fire started caused by a dryer, a commercial dryer that had a flame on top, and it didn't shut off. It just kept going until it finally had enough heat to start the building on fire. And then, of course, you know, we had the fire on Golf Course Road that we evacuated a few years ago, but Marcia had set out an evacuation plan. We had campers at the time, and very organized. We were out within a 3-hour period. And then,
That was great to do that.
yeah, that was fast. We were so fortunate that during the troublesome fire, we were closed. All animals, 45 head of horses were gone. All the little animals were gone. All the campers were gone. And that was, you know, a COVID year. And that was a year that we've never seen a camping year like that, where people were trying to get out, buying new units, and just filling our place. If it had been a month earlier, there would have been 100 units in there. And I don't know how we'd all gotten out. We were blessed from the standpoint of a small loss in terms compared to the Winding River Ranch, which lost 26 buildings. Sun Valley Ranch lost all of their buildings. We lost 4. One was an important building, but we were able to rebuild within 6 months after the fire. One of the biggest losses for Nick at the time was we lost 55 brand new snowmobiles. And of course, there was no coverage on those. We would buy snowmobiles in the fall, operate them in the winter, and sell them in the spring, and they were always outside. That afternoon that the fire came in, Nick and one of the employees had been moving them away from a building that sits right next to the forest border, out into the open. The building next to the forest border did not burn, but all the snowmobiles burned. So, Jesus. It just, now, we, in the last few years, have been in a transition phase, and family continues to be a part of it. Our grandson Mitch has been a part for the last 5 years and just has done a terrific job. And he brought us up to date on technology, which we had a long ways to go on that. But plus had been involved in building, and you know, I could go through each one of them, but I won't. But so many of them have just been a big part of this, and I was so happy to be able to see that this transition is moving on within the family, and that Nick and Melissa and their family are going to be taking over the operation as a whole. So we now, as we move on, and we're not moving out of Grand Lake for sure. Our home is here. We may be gone for a couple months when it gets more snow, but for the most part, we will be here. But we've gotten involved in Community Church of the Rockies, which purchased Sombrero Stables. And very unique situation there. Our pastor, Pastor Brian Hohalter, had mentioned that as a possible church site several years ago when we were starting to look for property. At that time, I called the Walkers. I'd gotten to know Rex Walker and his son Cody, and they had no interest in selling at that time, unless it was a very high price. But 2 years later, the realtor that was selling a property to Cody Walker needed an exchange property. And so they got in touch with property owners close to Sombrero Stables, which Nick and Melissa owned the property that you might be familiar with that says on the trail rentals on it. And Nick passed that information on to me, and from there to the church board, and from there to the congregation. And in less than a 2-month period from the time that we heard about it, we went to closing. And it's an exciting project, and it's one that we had, Community Church of the Rockies had been around now since 2012, but always had our focus on Grand Lake, and this puts us right at the entrance to Grand Lake. And we've been so excited to go in there and clean up and to be very much a part of the community and serving the community's needs in any way that we possibly can.
And with the live nativity, that was.
Yes, we have begun to use the property, and had the second year of live nativity, and Donna's helped us with that, and also had an Easter sunrise service there. And during the summer of '24, we had worship service there every Sunday. And we'll be doing it again this year, and Easter sunrise service again this year. And as we get further and further into the project, we definitely plan to keep the stable as a part of our church facility and let lot history.
So as I mentioned earlier, before I was actually finished working at Winding River Resort, the Lord spoke to my heart and brought back a memory that I have always wanted to create a place for children, homes for children, and children that have been abused, abandoned, neglected. And so it was really neat when he said, now's the time, and let's go after this. And so I was trying to juggle working on this new nonprofit that we started and work at Winding River, and I always felt like I was in the wrong place. Every time I'd work on Eagle's Nest, I feel like I should be working on Winding River, and I'd work Winding River and feel like I was neglecting Eagle's Nest. And so it's been a blessing for me to be able to focus all of my energy since the family was able to take over the business and just focus on this. And so Eagle's Nest, will be here somewhere in Grand County. We're waiting. Our biggest hurdle right now is acquiring a property. So if you know of a ranch type property that might be for sale, or even better yet, that maybe someone might like to donate or help us acquire, don't go. So we want to create basically a ranch environment where we'll have cattle and horses and animals, in addition to taking in these kids, and we'll build individual family style homes. So it's not like when I grew up, we had orphanages, and I actually worked in one for when I was in college. I volunteered at one. But it's totally different than that. These are individual family style homes because the kids will repeat what they know. And if they've never known what it is to be a part of a family, a healthy family, where they're safe, that's huge. So many of these kids need a safe place. So that they have the love of a mom and dad, that cares for them, looks out for them, takes care of them, that they have a sense of belonging by being a part of the family. These are all needs that children have, and these kids that are coming from these hard places through no fault of their own. A lot of people think these kids are bad. They're not bad kids. They come from bad circumstances. And like I said, through no fault of their own. They need stability. That's what we want to provide, and permanence. So we'll be an alternative to foster care. When we take the child in, we will raise them to adulthood whenever that is. There's no aging out. And so we found a model in Alabama called Big Oak Ranch. They've been using this model now for over 50 years. They've raised over 2,000 children with this model, and they've had incredible success rate with the kids. Following, when they leave, they continue to follow them to see how they're doing, and it's amazing. So that's where we are. So if anyone knows of any ranch type property, and I do have, thanks to Donna, I have some brochures. Actually, I have some in my bag too. But some brochures about Eagle's Nest. One of the things that I think, as far as Grand Lake is concerned, one of the biggest problems and hurdles is for people to find workers, employees to help, right? Especially in the summers. Well, the great thing is these kids that we get, we are going to teach them through ranching and all kinds of things, a good work ethic. So they could be a great source of help in the community. We want the kids to work, and the businesses here, we want to offer them, because the kids want to work too, they want to make money. And we need to get them ready for when they're going to leave. So we'll have bank accounts created for them and everything. So that's Eagle's Nest. If you'd like to know more, I can talk all night on that. So I'll give it back to Wes.
I would just like to thank all of you for coming, and I'd like to say that you are all welcome to come out and partake in, whether it be a chuck wagon breakfast and a pancake, or a sleigh ride, or a snowmobile ride.
Or farm for their grandkids.
Yes, we didn't even talk about the animal farm, but that's really important to the little kids. And so all of our activities are not limited to the people who are just happen to be staying with us. They're open to all of you. And in closing, I'd say we are blessed.